Greetings to all. Welcome to Future Officers Academy. Today we are going to see the daily current affairs of September 24. So today we are going to discuss the topics of Center State set to review scope of AFSPA in Manipur, which comes under GS2 under Indian polity. Next, massive Greenland landslide sent seismic waves around Earth for 9 days. So which we have to know under GS3 disaster management. Next, working women's double shift. So which comes under GS1 Indian Society. Next, NBFC sector resilient under scale-based regulation framework RBI bulletin. So which comes under GS3 Indian economy. Next, FJOD, which we have to know under terms. Next, editorial analysis we'll be seeing. So our first topic is about center state set to review scope for AFSPA in Manipur. So why it is in news? The center and the Manipur government are set to review the scope of the Armed Force Special Powers Act (AFSPA) in the northeastern state. So first we have to know about the Armed Force Special Powers Act (AFSPA) 1958. It is a law enacted by the Parliament in 1958 which gives the armed forces special powers and immunity to maintain public order in disrupted areas. So when it is applied, it can be applied only after an area has been declared disputed under section 2 of the Act. Next, what is disputed area? An area can be considered as disturbed due to difference of disputes among different religions, racial, language, or regional groups or caste communities. So, who declares an area as disturbed? The central government of the governor of the state or administrator of the union territory can declare the whole or part of the state or union territory as disputed area. It can be invoked in places where the uses of armed forces in aid of the civil power is necessary. So the special powers of armed forces under AFSPA are: they have the authority to prohibit a gathering of 5 or more persons in an area, can use force or even open fire after giving due warning if they feel a person is in contravention of the law. If reasonable suspicion exists, the army can also arrest a person without a warrant, enter a search of premises without a warrant, and ban of the possession of firearms. Any person arrested or taken into custody may be handed over to the officer in charge of the nearest police station, along with a report detailing the circumstance that led to the arrest. These armed forces are immune from prosecutionalists. The Union government provides sanction of the prosecuting agencies. Now, where is AFSPA in force now? Apart from the Nagaland, the AFSPA is currently in force in Jammu and Kashmir, Assam, and Manipur, except Impal and Arunachal Pradesh. Our next topic is about massive Greenland landslide sent seismic waves around Earth for 9 days. So why it is in news? In September 2023, seismic stations across the world detected an unusual signal which persisted for 9 days. It was caused by massive landslide in the Greenland's Diction Fjord, that is narrow sea inlet with steep sides or cliffs created by a glacier. So we have to know about the massive Greenland landslide. The landslide involved a colossal volume of 25 million cubic meters of rock and ice, equivalent to filling 10,000 Olympic sized swimming pools. The landslides involved 25 million cubic meters of rock and ice, which is enough to fill 10,000 Olympic sized swimming pools. This event caused a mega tsunami with waves as high as 200 meters, which significantly impacted the area. The seismic waves created by the landslide lasted for 9 consecutive days. The loss of such a large amount of glacier ice highlights how global warming is speeding up damage to these fragile environments. Next, what are the causes of this Greenland landslide? The main reason for the landslide was global warming, which caused the glaciers in Greenland to melt and shrink over recent decades. The White Peak Glacier had been holding up the mountain slopes, but as it thinned the rock above, it became unstable and eventually collapsed. The permafrost, that is frozen ground on the mountain steep slopes, started melting because of rising temperature, making the slopes unstable. When the rocks and ice fell into the fjord, it triggered submarine landslide, a landslide underwater, which made the event even bigger and caused a mega tsunami. So that's all from this topic. Our next topic is about working women's double shift. So why it is in news currently? The tragic death of 26-year-old chartered accountant Anna Sebastian Perel in Pune has sparked debate about professional workload in India, with her mother citing work stress as cause. So what does the ILO data observe about the professional Indian woman? Longest working hours globally, Indian women in professions like information technology, media and professional, scientific and technical fields work the highest number of hours globally. Women in IT and media jobs work 56.5 hours weekly, while women in professional, scientific and technical fields work 53.2 hours per week in 2023. Young professional women work more. Young women, especially those aged 15 to 24, work even longer hours. For instance, young women in IT and media works 57 hours per week, and those in professional, scientific and technical fields work 55 hours per week. Gender imbalance in workforce. Indian women are underrepresented in these sectors. Only 8.5% of the Indian workforce in professional, scientific and technical jobs and 20% in information and communication jobs are women. This low percentage is among the lowest globally. Global comparison, in countries like Germany, women in similar IT and media jobs work for fewer hours, 32 hours weekly. Russia reports 40 hours for the same sector, highlighting how disappointingly longer Indian women work. Next, the major challenges in Indian society. First, the workload stress. Workload stress. The tragic death of Anna highlights the intense workload stress that young professionals, especially women, face. High demands and long working hours can severely affect mental and physical health. Next, male dominated workforce. Male dominated workforce. So, women in professional fields face challenges working in male dominated environments, which can result in increased pressure, lack of support, and issues for gender equity. Next, the systematic gender inequality. Despite rising participation in the workforce, the gender imbalance in professional sectors reflects deeper societal and structural inequalities. Women continue to face barriers to career advancement, equal representation, and fair treatment. Next, the fourth one is lack of support. The absence of adequate organizational support during personal tragedies, as indicated by Anna's case, points to the lack of empathy and a toxic work culture in certain professional settings. Next, the government initiatives. So, women in STEM. Women in STEM. Here, STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. The Indian government has launched several initiatives to encourage women participation in technical and scientific fields, including scholarships, mentorships, programs, and awareness campaigns. Example, Gadi Initiative. Gadi Initiative. So next, the maternity benefits. So the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act 2017 increased paid maternity leave for women from 12 weeks to 26 weeks, aimed at helping women balance work and family life. Next, the Gender Equality Programs. Initiatives like Beti Bacho, Beti Padhao promote girls' education and empowerment, aiming to address the long-term gender imbalance in professional spaces. Next, the skill development initiatives. Skill development initiatives. So government programs like Skill India and Digital India aim to provide technical and vocational training to women, helping bridge the gender gap in high-skill industries such as IT and professional service. So through this work-life balance reforms it enforces stricter labor regulations on working hours and promote flexible work arrangements to reduce burnout, particularly for young professionals in high-demand sectors, strengthen gender diversity and equity initiatives within male-dominated industries by fostering supportive work environment, mentorship programs, and leadership opportunities for women. So that's all from this topic. Our next topic is about NBFC sector resilient under scale-based regulations framework RBI bulletin. So first we have to know why it is in news. During the transition to the scale-based regulation framework, the NBFC sector experienced double-digit credit growth, maintained adequate capital levels, and saw a reduction in delinquency ratios. So with this, what is the scale-based regulation, that is SBR? The SBR framework was first outlined in October 2021 and became effective on October 1, 2022. It aims to categorize NBFCs based on their size, activities, and perceived riskiness rather than merely distinguishing between systematically important and non-systematically important entities. Now, what are the key points presented by RBK on the resilience of NBFC sector? Here, the improvement in assessment quality. So, since the introduction of the scale-based regulation framework in October 2022, the asset quality of NBFCs has improved with the longer gross non-performing asset ratios. So, by December 2023, GNPA ratios has decreased to 2.4 percentage for government-owned NBFCs and 6.3 percentage for non-government NBFCs, reflecting enhanced risk management. Next, the double-digit credit growth. The NBFC sector maintained strong credit growth throughout 2023, driven by a diversified funding base, including retail credit growth, that is, gold loans, vehicle loans, and housing loans, and expanding into industrial and service sectors. Next, the improved profitability. The sector witnessed a rise in profitability as evidenced by better returns on assets, that is, ROA, and equity ROE. Net NPA, that is NNPA performance. Upper layer NBFCs had lower GNPA ratios than middle layer NBFCs, but the latter maintained sufficient provisions for risk of portfolios, ensuring that their NNP ratios were also controlled. Next, the compliance with SBR. Major NBFCs in the upper layer identified the RBI under the SBR framework, such as LIC Housing Finance, Bajaj Finance, and L&T Finance have compiled or initiated steps to comply with listing requirements. Next, regulatory measures taken by NBFC sector. Scale-based regulation framework that is introduced in October 2022, the SBR framework categorizes NBFCs into different layers based on size, systematic importance, and risk profile. For instance, strengthen asset quality, capital requirements, and risk management. So next, the prompt corrective action. Effective from October 2024, PCA norms will apply to government-owned NBFCs. The measure aims to enhance financial discipline, focusing on capital adequacy and asset quality. Next, the diversification of funding source. Due to rising risk weights on bank lending, NBFCs have diversified their funding base by reducing dependence on bank borrowing and expanding into two secure retail credit. Next, the listed complaints. Many NBFCs in the upper layer have compiled or in the process of compiling with listing requirements as part of regulatory mandates. Next, what are the emerging risks that NBFCs need to cater? Cyber security risk. The first and base thing is cyber security risk. So with the increasing use of digital platform, NBFCs need to enhance cybersecurity measures to safeguard against evolving cyber threats. Next, the climate risk. The financial impact of climate change poses a new risk. NBFCs must integrate climate-related risk into the risk management frameworks to mitigate potential disruptions. Next, the third thing is financial assurance functions. So the RBI emphasized the assurance functions like risk management, compliance, and the internal audit are critical in the maintaining resilience in the face of rapid challenges in financial landscape. Next, the fourth one is evolving regulatory environment. Regulatory environment. So, as the financial sector continues to evolve, NBFCs must stay ahead of regulatory changes and ensure that their risk management practices are aligned with emerging threats and new regulations. So, that's all from this topic. Our next topic is about FAJOD. The diesel fuel spill from a ship that sank recently spreads to the Greenland fjord. So we have to know about the fjord detailedly. A fjord is a long, deep, narrow body of water that reaches inland. Fjords are often set in U-shaped valley with steep walls of rock on either side. Fjords are found mainly in Norway, New Zealand, Canada, Greenland, and US state of Alaska. So how are this formed? It have been shaped throughout the span of several ice ages by slow-moving glaciers. As the glacier moved, it cut away at the top of the layers of ice and into sediment below. Melting waters also carved away into the land, meaning that many fjords are actually deeper than the sea that feeds into it. So whether the fjord meets the sea, also known as a mouth, many glaciers left behind shell or shoal rock deposits. Because the mouth is shallower opening than the body of this, it results in extremely fast moving water. This includes strong currents and saltwater rapids. So it commonly are deeper in their middle and upper reaches than at the seaward end. This results from the greater erosive power of the glaciers closer to the source where they are moving most actively and vigorously. Because of the comparatively shallow thresholds of fjords, the bottoms of many have stagnant water and arch rich in black mud containing hydrogen sulfide. Some features of this include coral reefs and rocky islands called skerries. Next, the epichelf lakes. Another feature of some of these is the presence of epichelf lakes. These lakes occur when melted fresh water becomes trapped under a floating ice shelf. This fresh water does not mix with the salt water below, but rather floats on top of it. So our next topic is about editorial analysis. Under the editorial analysis, we will be the discussing topic of India's different exports and humanitarian law. The first we'll be seeing the context. Having India amend its domestic laws would be a better way to strengthen its credibility and assess the international humanitarian law of countries importing its defense goods. So next, the introduction. The Supreme Court of India earlier this month dismissed a public interest litigation, that is PIL, asking that the central government to directed to stop exporting defense equipment to Israel as Tel Aviv is allegedly committing war crimes in Gaza. The top court refused to intervene reportedly because foreign policy is not a domain. However, the issue that the bill raised is a normative one that goes beyond Israel. It must be clearly understood given India's aspirations to become a major defense exporting nation. About defense export, it is critical to recall that quite a few countries have curbed defense export to Israel. For instance, a court in the Netherlands ordered the Dutch government block the export of all F-35 fighter jet parts to Israel. The basis of this order is the European Union regulation, which prohibits military equipment export to a country if there is a clear risk that the recipient country would use such equipment to violate international humanitarian law. Likewise, the United Kingdom government, acting under the Export Control Act, reviewed Israel's complaints with IHL concerning the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Admission of risk, it concluded that there is a clear risk if certain arms are exported to Israel, they would be used to commit or facilitate serious violations of IHL. Next, the legal gap. Lack of equivalent law. The UK's Export Control Act or EU regulations in Indian law requiring an assessment of a country's compliance with IHL obligations in deciding whether they export defense equipment to such a country. The Indian Foreign Trade Act 1992 (FTA) freed the weapons of mass destruction and their delivery system. Prohibition of Unlawful Activities Act 2005 empowers the central government to regulate the export of designated goods relevant to India for various reasons. The reasons are listed in sections 3, 5 and 2(1) of the WMDA and FTA respectively. The international obligations that in addition to such things as India's national security, an important factor listed in these sections is India's international obligations under any bilateral, multilateral or international treaty, convention. The permission to prohibit. The central government can prohibit the export of defense goods due to India's international law obligations. This is the closest Indian law gets the connecting the export of defense goods with international law. According to India's domestic law, the central government, unlike the UK and the EU countries, is not under the obligation to review the IHL compliance of the country to which India is exporting defense goods. Thus, the legal gap. Next, what has been the stand of the Supreme Court here? Filling up the vacuum, the Supreme Court in several cases such as Vaishak versus State of Rajasthan has not just used international law to enlarge the content of domestic law but also judicially incorporated international law to fill the vacuum created by the absence of domestic law on the subject. Next, the international law. So under the international law, we'll be seeing that Arms Trade Treaty aimed to regulating international trade and conventional arms. Article 6, Class 3 of the ATT bars a country from supplying conventional arms if it has the knowledge that these arms would be used to intend allied commit war crimes. Next, Article 7 obligates states to access whether the conventional arms they export would be used by the importing country to commit or facilitate a serious violation of IHL. Interestingly, India is not a signatory to this treaty. As a result, the treaty is not being on India and cannot be judicially incorporated through some provisions of ATT reflect customary international law. Next, the obligation. Common Article 1 of the Geneva Conventions, which is binding on India, obligates all states to respect and to ensure respect IHL. Imposing obligations as it was held by the International Court of Justice in Nicaragua versus United States. This provision imposes a negative obligation states. Thus, countries are under obligation not to supply weapons to a country if there is expectation based on facts or knowledge of past patterns that such weapons would be used to violate the convictions. Scholars argue that the certainty required for the exporting state that its weapons will be used by the importing state to commit violations of the Geneva Convention is quite high. So finally, the conclusion. When India domestic laws, the WMDA and the FTA are read in the light of India's IHL obligations, a clear duty arises not to supply weapons to countries that would use them to breach its IHL obligations, but rather than deriving this obligation using international law, it would be better for India to amend the WMDA and the FTA. This approach will explicitly evaluate the compliance of countries importing Indian defense goods with international humanitarian law. By doing so, India can enhance its credibility as a responsible defense exporting nation. So that's all from today's topics. To read this document, you can visit our website. Our website link have been provided in the description. To get more daily current affairs videos, follow our YouTube channel, also our Telegram channel. Thank you.